1/6, we're off with a thing called exponential notation. So the first bit of homework, they'll give you problems like this and say, write these in exponential notation. So if you were to do that, what would this look like?
3 to the 4th.
It would look like 3 to the 4th. We'll take a quiz tomorrow. I think it's about 10-ish points. Some early points would include, what are those numbers called?
Exponent is
Who's the exponent?
The subscript.
Yeah, so that 4 is called an exponent, potentially. Memory, so what things are called there?
The base.
Who's that?
The 3.
3 is the base. One of those has a synonym word.
Power.
Exponent can also be called a power. Not making the board, so I'll just make a space, building continually off of this. There's 2 powers that have names. Remember, that's true, but special powers that have special names.
Squared.
What's that for?
2.
Yeah, squared is when you have a second power.
Cubed is when you have 3.
Cubed is when you have a third power. But the first little bit of the homework, they'll give you something like this and say write that in exponential notation. The first bit of the quiz, and I'm sure it's going to have those 5 points on it. I'll look at that with you in a minute. How about this one? Thought I'm doing that one?
-5 to the second power times x to the third times y to the second.
I almost agree with that. Anybody have a slight modification?
Would it just be 5?
No?
I have to wrap the -5 in parentheses.
You do. If you just had this negative, that only accounts for this negative. If it's going to have negative twice with the 5, to make the second power go with both, you would need parentheses around the negative and the 5. So with just a lonely negative, would you need the parentheses? No. But if it's negatives repeatedly, then we need to get them in the parentheses. How about this? What will we do about this?
Three to the 4th x to the 4th?
You could,
3x to the 4th.
if you use,
3x in parentheses.
so you could either go 3 to the 4th, x to the 4th, or you could go group and do a 4. Either of those is correct. I'd probably slightly prefer that one, but I couldn't really tell you why. Question about the first concept of write this in exponential notation. Then let's do some powers over here. Am I still on screen for this column? Yeah, okay. So 2 cubed, somebody?
8.
Is 8. 2 to the second?
4.
4. 2 to the first?
2.
2. There's a rule we could build off of that one. If you have anything to the first,
It's itself.
it is always just itself.
1.
It is 1. I was waiting for somebody to yell 0. There's a rule we could build off of that. Anything to the 0
Is 1.
is 1. As you move up the powers, what are we doing as we move up the powers, in this column at least?
Multiply.
By
2.
2. Because 2 was the
Base.
base. If the base were 3, as we rose, we'd be
6.
multiplying
9.
by 3. So if you're rising by multiplying 2, you must be falling by
2.
dividing by 2. And the only way this whole system maintains consistency is for the 0 power to be a 1. So what would a -1 power be?
1 over 2.
1 over 2. How about this one?
1 over 4.
Agreed.
And 1 over 8.
1 over 8. So then my next question is, what the negative powers do to things?
55.
They do. But if we look at these answers compared to each other, those answers compared to each other,
And then you put a 1 over.
it is the reciprocals, and a less fancy name of the reciprocal. Reciprocal just means to
Flip.
flip. So both correct words. But if we have negative powers, Negative powers flip things. Because these are like they're on top right now of
1.
ones. If you flip them, it's 1 on top of stuff. So negative powers flip things. It would be 1 over, and then the same problem, but with a positive power. So a problem like this, I would think 2 to the third to make 8, like we did a minute ago, but put a 1 on top of that instead. Question about those? These two, are they going to get me the same result or different results?
Different.
Different. How are the results going to be similar?
Maybe the same number.
Okay, what are they going to be? What number will they be?
16.
They both have something to do with 16. 4 to the second has something to do with 16. 4 to the second has something to do with 16. How are they different?
The first is negative.
This one's negative, this one's
Positive.
positive. Why is this one positive?
Because it's in parentheses.
Yeah, so a negative, this is doing a negative times a
Negative.
negative, which makes a
Positive.
positive. This negative only got counted
Once.
once. So this one's negative. That one turned out positive. Something about those. How many negatives are there really in this one?
1.
Just one. How many negatives are there in this one really? 3. Negative times negative times negative. Are those going to end up at the same or different result?
Same.
Same, but by a different sort of path. They're both what answer?
64.
But
Negative.
negative 64. So they're both 4 times 4 times 4s is 64s, but this negative just kind of carries over. This you'd have to think about a negative times a negative, which is a positive, times another negative. That's why that one turned out negative. Question about those. Front row, can somebody assist me by giving a turn to capture these last couple columns instead of where we're presently looking? Otherwise, my viewing audience will think I disappeared off the face of the earth. It'd be sad. I have over like 100 subscribers, so you'd be disappointed. So I'm going to go all the way to this. The lesson we just learned over there. If we have a negative and it goes to the odd power, how's that always going to end up?
Negative.
Negative. But if we go a negative to an even power,
Positive.
that is going to be a positive. What about that idea? So down this column, our job, our instructions will be write these without negative powers. What did we just decide negative powers did a second ago? A minute ago. They flip things. So instead of having x to the negative third, I want to have involved an x to the positive third. But I've got to somehow get this stuff flipped. What should that look like?
1 over x.
1 over x to the third. If it's on the bottom, and I don't want negative powers anymore, how can that work out?
X to the 4.
Just x to the fourth. Things that were on the bottom move to the top. Things that are on the top move to the bottom. If you argue with me that these aren't on the tops, I would counter-argue that they are on the tops of
And to the 1.
invisible ones. So negative power on the top moves to the bottom. Negative power on the bottom moves to the top. They're just going to change their signs as they go. So if our directions here are no negative powers, who can still just sit where it sits?
A to the second.
A to the second can wait. Who else can wait?
D to the 6.
D to the sixth can wait. But B to the negative third's got to move. Instead of being on the top,
Move to the bottom.
it's on the bottom, and it's now
Positive.
positive 3. Who else is moving?
C to the 5th.
C to the fifth, and that's on the top. Question about that moving. Do you need another one like that? Or you got that? So I'll change the game. Now I'm going to say negative powers are good. I want negative powers. If I want negative powers, who can sit? Somebody other than Izzy who dominated that conversation. Who can sit if I say I want negative powers?
That's
X to the minus 2 just sits.
B minus 5.
B to the negative 5 just sits. Where's the y going to end up?
On the bottom.
On the bottom with,
Negative.
and also we'd end up with
A is negative 4.
on the top. Question about that. Here's a bigger version. We could take it in either direction. Do you want to make them all negative or make them all positive? I don't care. You do.
Positive.
Make them all positive. So who's going to sit?
B.
B is going to sit.
B and
F is going to sit.
F. D.
D is going to sit. Where's A going to end up?
The bottom.
As a
2.
2.
C at the bottom of 3.
Yep.
And E at the top would be 4.
Agree. Moral of the story is negative powers do what?
Flip.
Flip. They're going to move from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom, and they'll switch signs as they go. Okay. For this one, I want to play the game of write this with negative powers. Theory on this, write it with negative powers being preferred. Anybody brave?
6x in parentheses.
Okay, the 6 and x have to stay in parentheses, I'll agree.
And negative 2.
I agree with that. Since this was all on the bottom, it's all moving to the top. It was all in parentheses, so it still is. Negative 2 needs to go with everybody. How about this one? Slightly different, not the same answer.
Six x to negative 2.
Not quite.
Is it just 6x negative 2?
That's what she said, not quite.
The negative 2 goes on top. X, negative 6 stays on the bottom, but
Yeah.
X moves to the top of the 2.
That's correct. The only thing that the exponent is touching is who?
2.
The x. The x and the 2 go together. The 1 and the 6 have nothing to do with this. So the 1 can sit, the 6 can sit, none of that's moving anywhere. That had nothing to do with the powers, they just stayed put. It's the x that had the power. So the x on the bottom is going to move to the top, but now have a negative 2. And I don't need to write the 1. It didn't hurt anybody, but it doesn't need to be. Question on that? Again, this time I want negative powers. How can I make this have negative powers?
Y to
Y
the negative
minus
6 on
6.
top.
Y negative 6 is going to sit on top where it's already on top of a 1.
And X minus 5.
X to the minus 5 moves to the bottom. Question on that? Again, one last reinforcement. If I do these two problems, are these the same or are these different?
Different.
They're different. If we did them out, what would they have in common? And that's why it is a little bit deceptive.
3X.
They both have that x and the third power. But in terms of the numbers, this just has a
2.
2, because the 2 has nothing to do with the power. The power only goes with its most local native. And then what's this?
And 8.
An 8. 2 times 2 times 2, because the parentheses grouped it to make it do that. That's basically what we're after today in terms of the lesson. So let me look at exactly what the quiz says and exactly what the homework is. And then we'll go back to page 29 in a second if you want to pull out the page 29 stuff that you did. So homework page, we're working this time 33, goes to 47. And I don't see anything too surprising. It's pretty much like what we just looked at. Little quiz, there are 10. I said it should be about 10, so there are 10. So I'll give you a problem like where we came in, where I'll say label these parts. So exponent is a choice, power is a choice, base is a choice. And then I'll ask you some other stuff with words. What's anything to the first? Itself. So I'll circle these answers from before. Anything to the 0.
1.
is 1. What the negative exponents do,
Flip.
flip things. What's a negative to an even power?
Positive.
Positive. Negative to an odd power.
Negative.
Negative. Two powers that have special names, and what are the names?
Squared and cubed.
Squared and cubed. So we've got a board full of circled answers now. The home viewing audience can only see these columns, but maybe we'll give them a final pan back left where they can see the circles, but they should understand. Anybody 1-6 kind of questions? Why don't we do a little pan back left so they can see what we circled over there, linger like 5 seconds. They have a pause button they can use if they want to, and then we'll just cut it out.